Have you faced any challenges due to being a woman in the industry?
It's really hard to tell, because
out of all the companies you've worked at, all like the big tech companies, what's been your favourite problem to solve, if you're allowed to share that?
I've been fortunate enough to work on very, very interesting problems. I think
So what is it that you think makes good high quality code?
I'm a pragmatist, so I wouldn't say that it has to have 99% code coverage.
What were the skills you needed to make that quick progression?
So let me actually tell you the story of why it happened so quickly. I think that was
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Tech Unfiltered. Today I'm joined by Bhavana. Bhavana is a staff software engineer at Meta, but she's also being a part of 4 different FAANG companies. So, do you want to say more?
Hi, thanks Jade for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, I think that's a good introduction. I'm sure I will be talking a lot about myself over the course of the next half an hour or so. I just want to say that I've been an engineer for 15 years and I've loved and enjoyed every single minute of it. I'm really grateful that I get to do something I love for a living.
So, what was it that inspired you to pursue software development?
Yeah, I think the answer to this question is going to be really simple for me. I don't think I've ever considered being anything else since I was a child. My dad was a software engineer back in the time when it wasn't even a thing. He used to sit in this back IT room of a bank and take care of servers and write code occasionally. He used to program in COBOL and Fortran, programming languages like that. And he taught me to write my first computer programs in BASIC. I remember sitting with my sister at this gigantic computer and writing program. It was mostly my sister that was doing the leading, but she wrote a program to calculate simple interest given, the parameters. And I just knew that that's what I wanted to be. So every time I needed to make a choice about what I wanted to specialize in, etc., I basically worked backwards from being an engineer.
That's really cool. So one of the things that I noticed was that you initially started your journey in India and then you moved to the UK. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I also had a brief stint in the US.
So I was just curious, was there any differences in the way that software development is in each of the different countries?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In general, I think there's a lot of difference in the work culture, corporate work culture, whether it's software engineering or not. In terms of opportunities and the types of projects that I got to work on, since I predominantly worked for American companies, I think that the most exciting work, unfortunately, is happening in the US. However, things are changing now, and there's a lot of exciting work that is being kind of delegated to other countries as well. But this is, again, from the perspective of someone who's worked for large American corporates. I'm sure that if I'd worked for startups, local startups, things would have been very different. In terms of general corporate work culture, I think that UK is a lot more relaxed than the US and India. India being the most intense. People like to work really late, and it's a very normal thing to work past, say, 7 p.m. However, it's not that normal in the US and definitely not normal in the UK. I definitely enjoy working more towards the start of my day, so I'm happy that I'm not working in a place where I have to work too late. Another reason why I think India works a bit later is obviously they need to overlap with the US, so late evening calls is the only way they can do that.
Yeah, so how did you find actually getting a visa for both the US and the UK, and what was the journey into doing that?
US was obviously more complicated. So I had an opportunity to work for JP Morgan. So I had to kind of, not going into too much technicality, but there are a couple of ways you can get a visa for the US, but one of them is a lottery, like an H-1B lottery, and that is very unpredictable. Fortunately, I got through the lottery the first time I applied for it, but lots of people don't make it through the lottery because there's a limited number of visas that are assigned every year, and there is absolutely no way you can increase the probability of you getting selected in that process. So you just have to leave it up to fate. There is another process where you can work for a company in your home country for a year, and then they can get you over to the US. But that visa is a little bit different. It is tied to the company, whereas the H-1B visa is not tied to a company, and you can basically switch employers once you're in the US if you want to. That was the US. UK was a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward. I moved to the UK with Amazon, and all I needed to do was just let Amazon apply for my visa. And I think that based on your salary, you kind of get points, and the highest salaries are more likely to get visas. So if you get a good job with a good company, you're likely to get the visa. It's not a lottery system in the UK.
So how do you stand out then to these companies that offer visas for people who are abroad to make sure that they're going to choose you? Because I imagine that's also a challenge to get to be the one to be chosen.
I think that there's, to all these types of questions, there's only one thing that you can control, and that fortunately happens to be the thing that makes you stand out as well. These processes, it takes money. It takes money for them to sponsor you. So the most wealthy companies are more likely to do this and to stand out to the most wealthy companies, because there's a lot of competition. You just need to work on your skills. You just need to do the thing that you can do. And fortunately, it's kind of under your control. You need to become the best programmer, the best, architect, software architect, or whatever that it is that you're trying to do in the field. And if you can crack the toughest interviews, then these companies are willing to do what it takes to get you to a different country if that's where the role is, because it's hard to find good people. So that's the only thing that's in your control, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think as well as just being the best, there must be a way of showing that as well, showcasing that.
That is true. That's very true. So once you've built up your brand, I guess it becomes a lot more easier to stand out. But when you're starting out, I guess maybe, I wish I had a good answer for this. The way it started for me, let me talk about how it started for me, was during university, right? If you're in a university that has a good placements program, you start out well, and then you start building a network of people. A lot of my contacts in all of these companies have been people that I went to university with. You build a network of people, and then it keeps increasing the network that you have, because you go to a good university, you have a network of people that are in good companies, and then you start working at those companies, and then you just increase your network, and these people move around. I've relied a lot on my network of people to do this, but I do admit that it was good to start with. The fact that I went to a good university in India was again based in the fact that I knew what I wanted to do and I had the means to do it, etc. And I had my family support me through all of this. So I'm sorry if I
No.
This
No. I think
people.
There's a few.
Yeah, people are your weapon.
There's a few things that you said there that I think is key, and one of them was you're sort of building those connections before you're even looking. If you're starting at university, you're building those connections before you're even looking for a job. You're doing that placement before you're even looking for a long-term job, and I think that's quite key.
Yeah, that's been very, very important to me in my career. Whether I'm looking for a job or I'm just trying to solve a problem within a company, building connections, making friendships with people, connecting with people in general, I think has come quite naturally to me. I haven't really learned to do that. But if that is a skill that you struggle with, I would definitely recommend putting in time to do that, because it's not just finding a new job that requires it. Even if you're just handed a project, if it is any sort of project that's non-trivial, if it is anything bigger than just fixing a small bug, I think you will need to have the skills to talk to people, because nobody's gonna give you everything, like prescribe an entire task or an entire project to you. They might just give you a vague problem statement, and you will need to have the skill to kind of connect with people, talk to people, and find out the answers. And it becomes a lot more easier if those connections are already there and you're not trying to reach out to people just transactionally. It's okay to ask for help, absolutely, and people will be ready to help you. But if you already have those connections, that process becomes so much quicker and there is no friction in that process. So you are more likely to get these complex projects done than other people. And it really makes a difference when you're being reviewed at the end of the year, because that depends on people's feedback, and it makes a difference when you're being considered for promotions as well. So anything that you're doing growing in the field, connections with people, I think, is the most important thing next to maybe technical skills.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think one of the things that people I've spoken to who are looking for a job, often they don't actually do that networking part until they're actually looking for a job. And so they've got like months of networking build up that they have to do.
Yeah, I can tell you so many times that I've received requests for job referrals or just help in general from complete strangers on the internet. And it's not like I'm annoyed. I understand, you got to do what you got to do. But I know that it's very unlikely that I will spend my limited time on trying to find them something. But if I know these people already, I will do anything to get them help. Even if I know them, briefly through a job that I had 5 years ago, I'm a lot more likely to help them out. So and even when you're asking for help, I think that it's a lot more awkward to reach out to someone and ask for help for the first time. So it really helps to have these connections already beforehand, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a student, you're looking for jobs, you're already in a successful job, and even if you feel like you've already achieved everything that you have, I think it still makes sense to build those relationships, build a community around you, whether in your professional or your personal life. I think it's very basic to any kind of success.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think even like having someone who you've met at a networking event for 30 minutes like 3 years ago, that you remember them, and if they drop you a message, you're much more likely to respond to them and be like, yeah, let's catch up, and yeah, of course I can do that for you, than if you haven't ever met them before.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, when you said that, I just remembered that there is someone who I met, I think in 2015, that's 10 years ago, in some tech conference in the US. And I recently referred them to a job, one of the companies that I was working for. It didn't work out for them, but they did get an interview, which is quite difficult to get to. I mean, if you're a first timer and if you're an outsider. But yeah, you're right. I did take their message seriously because I didn't know them, I did speak to them.
So one of the things you just mentioned was you've been at a previous company, but actually you've been at some really good companies. So if I recall, you're currently at Meta, you've been at Microsoft with me, and you've been at Google and Amazon as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
like
you've experienced
catch 'em all.
catch 'em all. So you've experienced like four quite big companies. Like, would you be willing to share what the main like culture differences are between them?
Sure, yeah, why not? Yeah, they are quite different to each other in many ways, but a lot of things are common as well. So I'll go in chronological order. So Amazon is a very intense, kind of fast-moving company that focuses on delivery and more than anything else. They want to try things out, they have this concept of, two-door decisions. I can't remember the exact thing, but what they mean is that when you're making a decision, if you evaluate whether it's easy enough to back out of that decision if it doesn't work out. And if it is, then great. I mean, you can go for it without having to think too much about planning every single possibility, etc. You just have a backup plan. You try it out, see if it works, have some metrics that you want to measure your success on. And if it doesn't work out, you come back. That's fine. So Amazon really encourages experimentation and action over being paralyzed over tiny decisions. And it's very data driven as well. Every discussion that's had or any disagreement that's had is resolved based on the data rather than seniority, etc. Although I would say that is one of the companies that has chosen to make levels of ICs public. So if you're speaking to someone, if you look them up on a tool, you can easily find out whether they're an SD1, SD2, senior SD, etc. So that is, when I was at Amazon, I thought it was a done thing everywhere, but it isn't. So that's what Amazon was like. Then I worked for Google. Google is a company that puts a huge emphasis on wellness for their employees. I think they've been voted the world's best employer several times so far. So they have amazing perks and benefits. Obviously, you've all heard about like the food and the massages and the in-house gyms and everything is amazing. It's just really great to kind of walk into the building and just you feel so special because of the treatment that you receive. In terms of the work that they do, I think that there's a lot more autonomy in Google. You're expected to kind of govern yourself even from a junior, mid-senior kind of level. You're given a lot of freedom to do what you want, and you will be, obviously every company, they measure you based on the impact you've had, but there's a lot less management of your time. It's not done on the granularity that some other companies might want to do. I found that there's a lot more emphasis on working alone than working together as a team. That was my perception, but obviously this could have been because of the team, org, etc. But overall, you have a lot of freedom to innovate, do what you want at Google, but that also means that you need to kind of be the type of person that pushes yourself and not have someone push you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So that was Google. Then Microsoft, obviously, you know Microsoft a lot better than I do. You've spent a lot more time, but for the sake of the viewers, I can give you my perspective of it. Microsoft is a lot more collaborative than Google, and I would say that there's a lot of emphasis on doing things together. There's a lot of emphasis on helping other people, to the extent that they've actually had to add in some principles/values about using other people's help as well, because everybody was kind of going out of their way to help other people. So no one was really there to take help. So they've had to make some changes over this. So people are bending over backwards to help you. Really, really nice, friendly culture. However, things are a lot less standardized in terms of tech stack or like build environments, the IDEs used, the environments used, etc. A lot more standardized at Amazon and Google. They have a lot of in-house build tools. They've standardized IDEs. They've standardized their deployment methods. I think Google more so than Amazon, but at Microsoft, it was just go do what you want. And what else in terms of Microsoft? I mean, I think that the benefits at Microsoft are quite on par with Google. It's just that the hype around Google is a lot more than that around Microsoft. The benefits are really good at Microsoft as well.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm not.
you
I was
had a
just going to say
question.
I'm not sure about other parts of Microsoft. I think our company or like our like industry that we were in together, I think it was hard to standardize because it was very much dependent on the customers we were working with.
Great.
Whereas I don't think I'm not sure if it's in the
Yeah.
teams that you worked in Google, if it was more product based development.
Yeah, you're probably right. The tooling was definitely different. It could have been because we were mostly working with customers, but even then there's a lot of standardization in these other companies that, I mean, I think these tools have to be built out of necessity. I don't know. I'm not in a position to comment whether Microsoft did need these tools. I mean, we were able to get our work done for the roles that we were in, so it's all good. And then finally, Meta. I've only been here for a week and a half, so I don't have a lot to say, but I can tell you a little bit about what I've learned so far. They like to move fast. I think everybody on the internet knows that. It's like their mantra to say that they move fast. They are very they have a very standardized environment. The tools that they use, the way development happens. They have one repository for all of their code in the entire company, and it's so once you're in the Meta environment, everything is kind of instantly made easy for you, because they expect you to then work on the stuff that is not boilerplate. That's what my perception has been, and people are really helpful as well. There is a culture of really helping each other out, so people are really helpful. The onboarding process I was really impressed by how organized and uniform it was for everybody. And so again, there's a little bit of a similarity with Amazon. I think that there is an emphasis on delivery, on moving fast and delivering value for the company and for the customers. So that's my read on all of these companies.
And what advice, just say someone wanted to get into one of these companies, what advice would you give to them to do? What do they look for?
Okay, so first of all, I would say that all of these companies, actually, the common thing that ties all of these companies is the quality of ownership and wanting to solve all the problems that are in your way, and not kind of trying to push the blame on someone else, etc. So all of these companies are really heavy on values like this. So I would say start with studying the values of each of these companies, see where you think you will fit the best, because that is also a very important thing. You want to build a sustainable career. Study these values. They're pretty similar, I would say, across all of these companies. See if it really is for you. And once you do that, I think the biggest barrier so far that I've heard from people trying to get into these companies is to get an interview, and the current climate is really bad as well. I don't have a lot of advice around how you can get an interview. Referrals also haven't been working much these days, but if you're lucky enough to get an interview, I would say rely a lot on your recruiters, because they're very willing to help you succeed in the process. For example, when I had my interviews with Meta lined up, I had a very long chat with my recruiter about what they're looking for different levels. You know, most of these companies have levelings, and you want to target the one that you think you are the right fit for. I had a very long chat about what they look for specific levels, and I made sure that when I wrote down my examples for the behavioral interview, I highlighted the bits that mattered to the company to demonstrate that it is. I mean, I do have those qualities that they're looking for in a certain level. So definitely take the time, talk to your recruiter in a lot of detail about interviews and their process, exactly what they're looking for different levels, and what they're not looking for, what would they consider as red flags, etc. And once you have all of that information, you can also actually ask for some time to prepare. In the past, I've been able to ask, I think when I was preparing for Google, I asked for months. I don't remember, maybe 2 or 3 months to prepare for the coding and the system design interviews. So depending on where you think you are, all of the tools, the prep tools are quite I mean, everybody knows about this stuff, but really focus hard on the behavioral interview as well. Apart from the technical interviews, would be my advice. Don't wing the behavioral interviews. Don't do that at all. If you don't want to be down leveled, you might be hired, but you might be hired at a much lower level than you actually deserve. Think about your behavioral interviews really well, and yeah, obviously, like everybody knows about leak code and the what's the book called, designing data intensive applications. So that's standard.
So I don't know if this is something that like a thing, but one thing I noticed is a lot of people have come from not necessarily FAANG, but other big companies. So for yourself, for example, JP Morgan and other like big banks, and in the UK, for example, things like BBC and eBay and things like that. And I don't know if there's some weight there of if you can get into a big company, that can sometimes help you, because you then have that like distributed system knowledge, what they're kind of after sometimes.
Yeah, I also believe that resume shortlisting is also easier once you have one of these companies on your resume. They become part of your brand. Yes, you do become accustomed to what big corporates are looking for in terms of culture, because when you're working at a startup, I'm sure a lot of different types of like values are given importance as compared to big corporates. So once you're able to kind of mold yourself into that culture, it does get easier, and it definitely gets easier to get shortlisted as well. There was a time when I applied when I was in India. I think I was working for Goldman Sachs at the time. I applied for Google, and I never really received a call back. It was when I moved to the US and I started working for JP Morgan was the first time Google contacted me. I don't know, maybe I was mid-senior by then, or maybe because I had 2 names on my resume by then, who knows. But once I got into Amazon, I think it really opened the way for all of the other big companies. And obviously you need to take your career the way you want to take it, but it was good to know that that the recruiters started to reach out to me. So yeah, I agree that it definitely helps to have some big names on your resume. Although I would really like to say that's not something you should be chasing. Like, you do what you want to do, right? Like, don't worry about having big names if you don't want them.
Oh, no, exactly. I just meant more like if you're going to big tech sometimes if that's your goal, sometimes having some sort of intermediate step can sometimes help that. Like I was very much an oddity because I came from a startup background, but I know that a lot of people, like especially who I've talked to over LinkedIn and stuff, haven't had that background. So one thing I wanted to ask actually was, out of all the companies you've worked at, all like the big tech companies, what's been your favourite problem to solve, if you're allowed to share that?
Let me see. I've been fortunate enough to work on very, very interesting problems. I think I was working with the retail business when I was at Amazon. So the specific area that I was working on was the catalog, the product catalog that powers Amazon and Prime Video, etc. So there's billions of products on Amazon, and the data that's on Amazon, it's surprisingly high traffic. So there's lots of changes that are coming in. I don't know if I'm allowed to share what the traffic is like, the queries per second, but it is large scale. Let's say that. I think that just working on that business, it was my first experience on large scale systems, on distributed systems, and that really blew my mind how intense Amazon's operations are and how on-call works and how to build a system that wakes you up less at 2:30 a.m. and just learning a lot about production. I would say that the retail business and Amazon was, I think so far it's been my favorite problem to work on.
So you mentioned there that you was on call. Do you find that like in a lot of the roles you've had to do that?
Yes. So I think Amazon was the most intense because of the area that I was in. I did do on-call when I was at Google as well, but the on-call was only during work hours or during daylight hours because we had another team, a sister team in the US. We could kind of share the burden. It depends on the role that you're in, right? If you're not deploying to production, you don't have to be on call. But I would really, really highly recommend for people to not run away from roles that require on call, because that is what teaches you how to build software. Because when you're woken up in the middle of the night, you don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night. So that kind of drives you to write better code and get other people to write better code. You're reviewing other people's code with a lens that, this line is going to wake me up in the middle of the night. I don't like it. No, I want to add some, safety nets around it.
So what is it that you think makes good high quality code?
Wow. I love that question. Don't think I've ever thought of it in such a broad sense. So the number one thing that the code needs to do is to do what is required for your business and for your customer, right? You need to kind of work backwards from whatever that is. I'm a pragmatist. So I wouldn't say that it has to have 99% code coverage or it needs to read very well, etc. However, these things are important. They do translate into business value as well. So I would say first, think about what your business or your customer needs. What is it that will keep your business afloat? What is the thing that will make you money, essentially? Then you need to think about how you can make it easier for yourself and for your teammates to work together on our project. Again, the ultimate goal is to increase speed. So for example, when you think about that, you think about test coverage. If you don't have enough test coverage, first, things might break for your customer. And if that happens, then you will have to do a lot of manual work along with your colleagues. It's basically you're not treating your colleagues well if you're not writing good tests. Then if you're not writing clean code, then your colleagues won't understand what you've written, and it just slows development down. So think of everything from that lens. Think of what is the impact of what you're doing. You might bring down test coverage, but if that's still okay for your business, then it's okay. If you're thinking about architecture, stuff like latency and availability, etc., what is the thing that fits your business and fits your use case? What is it that your customers need? You really need to be thinking about everything from that lens, and I think you will figure out the answers for your product.
One thing you mentioned there was thinking about the customer and business needs. Do you feel like the companies you've worked at really put an emphasis on that business side?
I think that that is what differentiated these companies from the others that I've worked for. Like a relentless focus on what the customer needs or what the business needs really sets aside good tech companies.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen in the past is a lot of developers are like shielded away a little bit from understanding that business value, and it can sometimes make them not care about it.
Yeah, I think that that's a very short-sighted approach. Engineers are the people who are building things, and the business or the customer will be using it. So there's no point keeping these two entities separate. There needs to be as much communication between them as possible. And if that is not happening, then something is really wrong with your system. Definitely always, as an engineer, try to understand your business. And if you're a manager, make sure that there is opportunities for your team members to interact with whoever the representative of the business is, and make sure you're building up like visibility into what customers are doing. Like, for example, every click that you make on, say, Amazon.com or say on a social media website, everything is tracked so they can understand exactly what you're doing as a customer, and they make decisions based on that. So expose your engineers as much as possible to these things.
So I'm just gonna like navigate into a different area now, just more about just generally your journey of being a staff engineer. You've gone from, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, a mid-level engineer to staff engineer in like just over 3 years, is that right?
I think it was a very short amount of time. Yeah, between 21 to 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, just over 3 years, and I think that's really, really incredible. Would you be able to share your journey of what were the skills you needed to make that quick progression?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me actually tell you the story of why it happened so quickly. I think that was a symptom of me not getting to from mid-level to senior as quickly as I should have. And that was because I did not understand the soft skills that I needed to develop to make that change. I think that the promotion from mid-level to senior is a lot harder for a lot of people than any other promotion that exists in the tech space. So what I needed to do, obviously you got to keep improving your tech skills, right? And let me talk about tech first and then I'll come to soft skills. In terms of tech skills, what you need to do is you need to expose yourself to as much as possible, like as much surface area as possible around your project. So don't think that if there's a team meeting and someone else's task is being discussed, don't switch off and don't think that it's someone else's job, or your senior engineer or your manager will take care of it. Like, you need to be really switched on to what everybody else is doing as well. If you think that communication isn't great between your team, do something to kind of change that culture. Don't live in a silo. So by exposing yourself to other people's code through code reviews or pairing or just working in different areas, I think you will increase the surface area of what you're absorbing in terms of tech skills. Generally, you need to become a better coder, but also you need to really develop your architecture and design skills. So just really exposing yourself to what your senior engineer is doing and asking for more challenging work can be a way to do that. I know that that's what I did. I just did as much as I could around my team. And then in terms of so that was all there. I was leading projects, etc., and I was able to do the coding and the design. But the thing that kind of held me back from that senior engineer progression was being seen as a leader. In my case, in some people's case, they might be too aggressive or seen as they cannot earn the trust of their teammates. I think I was earning the trust of my teammates in terms of being collaborative and being supportive, etc. But the being confident and being able to put my foot down when needed and being assertive enough so that I can say that I can make decisions for the team when it's needed, that was something that I really needed to kind of. Nobody told me that I needed those skills. Nobody told me that that's what I was missing. They just kept saying that I wasn't ready in very vague terms, and I was doing a lot of work and that nothing was working. And then suddenly it clicked that this is what I need, and that came from observing a lot of other people. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of female role models to look up to. Senior ICs, I don't think we had many senior female ICs. So I'd look at these men and I think I'm doing everything that they are doing, but I really did miss the nuance of how they would really portray themselves as a leader. I just put that down to personality differences, whereas that is definitely a required quality in a senior engineer. So that is what kind of held me back from that. Once I knew that, I think I was able to kind of take the next steps of going from senior to staff/principal in the same way. I knew already how to improve my tech skills. I focused really hard on improving my soft skills as well.
So those soft skills then, what did that include?
I think being able to influence there's a lot, right? So first of all, being able to influence your team to do the things that you want them to do. Because if you have the skills and you have the understanding, you kind of are making the right calls anyway. Learning how to influence your team, so those influencing, persuading skills is definitely one of the top ones. Then being able to understand the business, that is another important soft skill. So you need to expose yourself to the business. But in order to do that, you need to be included in a lot of meetings. And in order to be included in a lot of meetings, you need to be assertive and make sure that your manager and whoever else is involved in these decisions are including you. So you need to really be able to speak up for yourself. And then when there are conflicts in the team, you need to be able to resolve them. We are surrounded by a lot of opinionated people because we're software engineers, and you need to be able to run a meeting in a way that shows that you're in control. You're able to kind of structure all these voices in the room into like a camp A and camp B, and then find a common ground for camp A and camp B. You don't, regardless of whether you fall in camp A or camp B, you position yourself as that person that can resolve the conflicts in the team and not be part of the conflict yourself. So stuff like these, I think, are the most important things that you'll need to do.
Yeah, so there's a bit of different things there. There's like that facilitation of team conflicts and facilitation just in general, and then that ability to be assertive, but also like know when to not be assertive, because you need to know when to take the team's guidance as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's a balance, isn't
It's
it?
definitely a balance. Yeah. I think people are like, there's a spectrum. There are people who are naturally very assertive, and they might actually need to learn to kind of be okay with listening to people and changing their perspectives based on what they've heard from other people. And then I was definitely on the other end of the spectrum, where I was very welcoming of other people's ideas, which is a good skill to have. And I still preserve a large part of it, but I also I had to learn to promote myself and my ideas and not always listen to other people, especially when those people are senior. I come from a culture where it's really important to kind of listen to your elders, and there's an element of that in every culture, but some more than the others. So I had to really tone that behavior down. And when I walk into a room, I have to remind myself, okay, my opinion matters as much as anyone else's. So I will make sure that I will say it out loud. And then if I have to change it based on data, that's fine. But I will not hold my opinion because it's not equal to the others.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. Thank you. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on to talking about just general women in tech and representation.
Yeah.
So one of the things in Microsoft you were a strong advocate for was the Women in IC initiatives. For you, why is representation so important?
I think I touched upon that a little bit when I was talking about not having role models. I've personally really suffered from not having role models in the field, not having someone to look up to, someone to emulate, someone to learn from. That is definitely one reason I'm so passionate about getting as many people in the field, so that we have, each other to fall back on and learn from. The second reason would be that policy making, the policies about promotions and hiring, etc., are all made by leadership. And there will always be bias if we don't have enough representation in these camps that have a lot of power. So we need to have diversity in these groups of people. So we need to help the women who are getting into tech to kind of progress to those levels, so that they can start a chain reaction and they can help more people enter and succeed as well. But for me personally, the most important thing has been having someone to look up to, someone as a role model, someone I can really get advice from or emulate, to understand how me as a woman, how can I navigate this industry, because it's going to be very different than how someone who's not a woman who would do it.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you on the regards to that. Like, I know, for example, I've had great business mentors who are women, but I haven't had any technical mentors as women, just because I haven't worked with many women until Microsoft. And then Microsoft, I haven't really had anyone like in the teams that I've worked with being like principal engineers, for example. So
yeah, it always happens. And if you look around you and really pay attention in any of these companies, you see that there's a lot of TPMs, there are a lot of project managers, a lot of people in supporting roles, even engineering managers have a better representation. These jobs are absolutely needed, and it's great that we have women in them. But if you look at core core tech senior ICs, there's a very, very poor representation of women. And as I'm speaking right now, I have nobody that I can think of who's in a senior IC position that I really, I can look up to and try and follow in their footsteps. There's nobody. I feel like I'm trailblazing all the time, and I don't want to be like that. I want someone that I can rely on as a mentor.
I feel like I'm quite lucky because I've got I'm still at that senior level, and I've got quite a few, like just such as yourself and Arena and all of you great content creators. But I completely get what you mean about there's a lot of supporting roles. And actually for myself, like I really like the TPM stuff, but I feel like I can't go into that because it feels wrong. Like, if you know what I mean, it feels like I can be a lot more impactful staying as a software engineer.
Yeah, I've always wondered about these roles, and the one thing that's held me back so far is the fear of being away from the action. I feel like this is where all the action is happening, and I want to be in the midst of it.
I hope no one got offended by that. I don't mean anything away. It's a personal thing. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, of course. If you imagine being an engineer without having a good manager or a good TPM or a good product manager, that would be so horrible. These jobs are absolutely important, but I guess it's just not for you and me.
I think it's just the fact. Yeah, I think it's just the fact that there is so much representation there already that I don't feel like I'm needed there.
True.
So, have you faced any challenges due to being a woman in the industry?
It's really hard to tell, because I don't think there's enough data that's being collected and published about this. For me personally, I think just the biggest challenge that I faced was getting over my own social conditioning. I think if I'd grown up as a man, I think I'd have less of these voices in my head telling me to be more polite, worrying about how other people are feeling all of the time, and I'd be more likely to go into any room with confidence and just believe that or know that I deserve where I am. There have been studies on men being naturally more confident than women because of the social conditioning. It's part of the book that I'm reading currently called The Confidence Code. But yeah, like my inner social conditioning, I think has been the biggest barrier that I've faced. It's really hard to tell about the other stuff in terms of whether I've faced any bias in terms of promotions or hiring, etc. I just don't have the data, and I don't know if I can comment. I know that society has moved on from being overtly sexist, so it's hard to detect these things. So I think it's become a lot more challenging to actually prove that there is bias. Whereas if you look at the raw numbers about how many women are being promoted as compared to men, and what's the representation at entry level versus senior IC level, you can tell that the data is really clear. But whether there is bias in hiring or promotion, etc., we don't really collect a lot of data in this space. We should, but we don't. So it's really hard to answer that question.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, because for me, I've been in similar situations where I've lacked confidence, and actually, like, I thought, okay, do they not want to listen to me because I'm a woman, or actually is it just because I don't sound confident enough? And actually, it's probably the latter.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's the confidence, right? It's the way people see you, really. I'm sure that there are some subconscious biases in people's heads when you walk into a room. I don't believe for 1 second that when I walk into any room, people look at me and go, oh, she must be software engineer at Meta. No, I'm sure that that's not what they're thinking. It's that again comes down to lack of representation. So it starts from there, the bias, and then you have to kind of prove yourself and improve your worth to every group that you're working with. That gets a bit tiring, but I really think that a lot of these problems can be solved by making it more normal for women to be engineers and be senior ICs specifically.
So what advice would you give to other women aspiring to enter the tech field?
I think that if that is something that you like to do, something that gives you happiness, I think you should absolutely do it. Is it hard for you to succeed as a woman in tech as compared to men? Yes, but I think the answer would be yes for most fields out there, that most corporate fields out there. So my advice would be definitely get in. It's an amazing field. You'll have so much fun here. There are some issues that we're trying to work through, but just find your network, find your trusted people, and keep at it. We really, really need you, need more of you in the field. And if we don't do it now, our daughters will be doing the same thing 20 years in the future, trying to struggle through this field. So please enter and succeed and prosper.
That's great. So we're coming to the end now, and I just want to ask you, what's next for you in your career?
I think I want to establish myself as a strong player at Meta. That would be my immediate next goal. And sometime in the future, I don't know, maybe 10 years from now, I'd really want to lead like an entire engineering division. I don't know if it's practical or sensible for me to wish to do that in a FAANG-sized company, but I'm not too worried about the size of the company, but it would be nice to have that sort of impact on any company, however big or small. So there's a lot of learning for me to do in the business side, as well as learning how to how to think strategically for an entire tech organization. Like, how do you plan based on the business objectives? How do you plan the tech strategy for an entire organization for the next 1, 2, 3 years? How do you do that? That's a little bit of a black box for me, but I will try and learn that over the next years.
Sounds amazing. So where can listeners connect with you to learn more about your work?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I share a lot of the advice that I have learned the hard way on LinkedIn in terms of little posts. I also have a blog, which you can find on my LinkedIn bio as well. And maybe we can link it to the video here. And I also have a very small YouTube channel. I really need to post more content over there, but over the next months, I am planning some content over there. And it's going to be a lot about soft skills that you need to learn as a software engineer. So yeah, if you're interested in that stuff, definitely connect with me.
Great. I will link everything down below. And now we just go on to our quick 5 questions round. Are you ready?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Number 1, what's your favorite coding language?
Oh my gosh. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but it's actually Java.
So number 2, tabs versus spaces?
It's gotta be tabs.
Number 3, Outlook or Gmail?
Gmail.
Number 4, ChatGPT or Claude?
ChatGPT.
And finally, what's your favorite IDE?
JetBrains, IntelliJ, for sure.
Thank you so much for joining the Tech Unfiltered podcast. It's been great having you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.